Hello everybody, and welcome to the complete Walking with Dinosaurs 25th anniversary breakdown. This video will be a compilation of the breakdowns of each of the 6 episodes of the Walking with Dinosaurs, with some annotations and updates added as well. There's not much else I can say in this intro, so let's get right into it.
This episode is set 220 million years ago, in Arizona.
The environment in the episode is accurate to what was believed about Ghost Ranch and the Chinle Formation, where this episode is set, at the time of production in the late 90s, but more recent studies have shown it would have been a more forested environment with high levels of seasonal rainfall.
It could be argued that the series contains circular storytelling, as it starts in the present and travels to the Maastrichtian, before travelling further back, essentially giving a slight preview of the very ending of the series.
The narration states that dinosaurs evolved 10 million years before the episode's setting. This was thought to be true at the time and potentially still is, but if the family Silosauridae is actually an early group of ornithischians, as they are often thought to be, then this is outdated, as Silosaurids potentially date back to 245 million years ago, a maximum of 25 million years before the episode's setting.
Placerias was a large, late-surviving dicynodont from the late Triassic of the United States. The narrator states that it is the last of its kind, but although it was one of the latest surviving dicynodonts, there were some that survived after. Placerias would not have been as common as depicted in the episode, as their fossils are actually quite rare, although it is possible that this is an artificially large group forming around the last water. In the American version of the episode, it is stated that the migration for water drove the Placerias to extinction. It is quite possible that Placerias had at least a light covering of hair. Placerias is referred to as a reptile when it was in reality a synapsid, or stem mammal.
Its tusks should be more downward pointing, and also would have likely been mostly encased within its skin.
Coelophysis was a basal neotheropod that lived in the late Triassic, 215 to 208.5 million years ago of the southwestern USA. This means that Coelophysis did not evolve until about 5 million years after the episode's setting.
And another coelophysid, Camptosaurus, is actually known from the Chinle Formation, but 220 million years ago, meaning it was perfectly timed to appear in the episode.
Like most theropods in the series, it is shrink-wrapped, has pronated wrists,
and is not feathered. The evidence for feathers in coelophysids is ambiguous, as although it is believed many early dinosaurs were feathered, it probably didn't apply to the Coelophysis, which lived in a more hot environment.
It is depicted as a cannibal in the series.
This was based on a series of remains which had a very confusing history. Some of them turned out to be crocodilians rather than young Coelophysis in the stomach. Others turned out to be Coelophysis young, which were jumbled with the remains of adults. But Coelophysis, like practically all animals that eat meat, would almost definitely have been a cannibal anyway, regardless of any evidence we have.
Coelophysis was in reality sexually dimorphic, with robust males and gracile females, but the show depicts both sexes as identical.
It is very unlikely that Coelophysis could hunt even an old or ill Placerias, unless it was literally dying.
A lungfish appears, live acted by an African lungfish, Protopterus species. The lungfish
Argonodus is known from Ghost Ranch. It is unknown if Argonodus formed cocoons.
Cynodonts were an incredibly diverse group of stem mammals, which were ancestral to, and in fact contain, all modern mammals. Though not stated as such in the series, the cynodont in this episode is identified as Thrinaxodon in the external media. But Thrinaxodon did not live in the Norian of Arizona, but in fact the Induan to Olenkian of South Africa and Antarctica much earlier and on the other side of the world. Catagidodon is a eucynodont from the late Triassic, approximately 221 million years ago, with Chinle formation, meaning it lived at the right place at about the right time to appear. Although Catagidodon was closer in size to a hamster than a dog, which it is depicted as in the episode.
Like Placerius, the cynodont is described as a reptile when it is not, being a synapsid. It appears that the cynodont is feeding on a horseshoe crab when it first appears. This is plausible as horseshoe crabs had evolved by the episode setting, and some extinct horseshoe crabs were known to have lived in rivers. There is evidence of cynodonts, including Thronaxodon, which the Walking with Dinosaurs cynodont is based on, living in burrows.
Postosuchus was a rarisuchid pseudotsuchian from the late Triassic from North America. Postosuchus is depicted as quadrupedal within the series, when in reality it was an obligate biped.
In order to make its being quadrupedal more plausible, it was given longer forelimbs. These limbs also have too many claws, having 5 rather than 3.
Postosuchus is showed urinating, and although some people have taken issue with this, given that modern pseudotsuchians, meaning crocodilians, are not able to do this, it is believed that it could, but it is unlikely it would have done this to mark a territory. Postosuchus was 4 to 5 meters long, not the 6 meters long it was depicted as in the series. The dying Postosuchus has no pupils, but the CGI model does.
Recently, some specimens of Postosuchus from the Chinle Formation were reclassified into their own genus, Viveron. Viveron is also believed to have been a facultative biped, but it was in fact slightly larger than the modern estimates of Postosuchus, being 5.5 meters long closer to the size within the episode.
But Dinosaurs was an incredibly basal pterosaur from the Norian, 218 to 215 million years ago, of Italy. The Dinosaurus' head is too small. Dinosaurs also only occurred in Italy, not Arizona, although the narrator states that it has travelled from far and wide, but this is contradicted by a large group of them appearing at one point. The CGI model does not have pycnofibers like it should, but the physical model does.
When landing, the Titanosaurus folds its wings upward, which, if it did this in reality, it would break its arms. Instead, it would have folded them backwards by rotating their hands.
A dragonfly appears in this episode, but dragonflies did not evolve until the later Jurassic. There are no dragonfly-like creatures known from Ghost Ranch or the Chinle Formation. Plateosaurus was a prosauropod, or basal sauropodomorph, from the Norian 227 to 204 million years ago, of Germany, Norway, Switzerland and Greenland. Plateosaurus, like Postosuchus, was an obligate biped, not a quadruped. Plateosaurus lived exclusively in Europe and not North America, but at the right time to have appeared.
It is likely that its presence in North America in the episode is due to the genus being a wastebasket taxon at the time. As of my writing this video, there are no sauropodomorphs known from the Chinle Formation, but there is a potential footprint, although almost all Triassic sauropodomorphs were known from the cooler polar regions, which makes it unlikely for these creatures to be present in the hotter Chinle Formation. The head is also wrong, being too pointed rather than the longer, boxier head it had in reality.
When the Plateosaurus arrive, a reprise of Time of the Titans plays. Signifying that these creatures would evolve into the Diplodocus from the next episode. The episode begins with large amounts of Placerias and the dominant Postosuchus but ends with the Placerius extinct and the Postosuchus dead, as well as with large swarms of Coelophysis and the arrival of the massive Plateosaurus, signifying thematically the dominance of the dinosaurs over the older Pseudosuchians and stem mammals. This episode. The episode is set in Colorado 152 million years ago, 68 million years after New Blood. The episode is set in what is known as the Morrison Formation, a massive late Jurassic formation taking up much of the western United States. But the environment portrayed in this episode is not accurate to what is known about the Morrison, in reality it being more of a desert and scrubland environment with floodplains, as was shown in the Ballad of Big Al. The episode was filmed in California and New Zealand, the forests and the canyon, Chile for the fern prairies, and Tasmania for the scrublands at the end. Diplodocus was a diplodocine diplodocid flagellichordate, or whip-tailed sauropod, from the late Jurassic Kimmeridgian, 154 to 152 million years ago, of North America, meaning it lived in the right place and time to appear in the episode. The egg tube used by the Diplodocus was completely speculative at the time and was based on that of a turtle, and is now thought to be incredibly accurate. Diplodocus would have taken a minimum of 20 to 40 years to reach adulthood, not the mere 10 years shown in the episode. Later discoveries have shown that Diplodocus would have held its neck in a more elevated position, not completely horizontal as shown in the show. Diplodocus was not the longest sauropod ever, unlike as was stated in the program. Several titanosaurs, including Argentinosaurus, Patagotitan and others, were substantially larger than it. The Diplodocus, like many creatures in the episode, is shrink-wrapped. Sauropods like Diplodocus would most likely have had more soft tissue on their necks. The nostrils of Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus should be much lower down on their heads than is shown in the series. Diplodocus's front feet should be more columnar and only have a single claw on each foot, whereas its back feet should be longer, although they have the correct number of claws. It is believed that Diplodocus was capable of rearing up on its back legs, though it is possible that this could cause a lack of blood to the brain. The episode states Diplodocus could grow to 40 meters long. This is a massive overstatement. In reality, it could only grow to a maximum of around 27 meters. It is also stated to weigh 25 tons, when more recent estimates show that it only weighed about 15 tons. It is also unlikely that Diplodocus could have used its tail like a whip, as this could cause major damage to the internal structure. Sauropods had their shoulders higher on their bodies than their hips, allowing them to browse on higher branches. Although the teeth of the adults are accurately peg-like and facing outwards, more modern discoveries show that the young had teeth further back in the mouth, implying they had a different diet and feeding habits. Although the back spines are not known from Diplodocus itself, they are known from several close relatives, meaning it was very likely that they had them in real life.
And sauropodlets' necks are too thin and spindly.
An unnamed ornithopod appears. It was later identified as Drysaurus in Ballad of Big Al. Drysaurus was a dryomorphin iguanodontian from the late Jurassic, 155 to 145 million years ago, of the United States, meaning it lived in the right place and time to appear. It is possible that the Drysaurus would have had feathers in reality, and should probably have more flesh on it. Ornitholestes was a basal Maniraptoromorphin,
or possibly a basal oviraptorosaur,
from the late Jurassic, 154 million years ago, of North America. meaning it lived in the right place at around the right time to appear. It is incredibly unlikely that Ornitholestes had a nasal crest, since this was mistakenly interpreted based on damage to the skull's snout. Without the crest, the snout should curve slightly downwards at the tip. The Ornitholestes should have stickle claws on its feet in reality. Although it gets credit for being the first feathered dinosaurs in the series, it should have a full feather coat rather than just quills. Ornitholestes and many other theropods in the series should not be able to pronate its wrist. It is also too shrink-wrapped, and its head is too large for its body. Damselflies appear in the episode. The first damselflies evolved in the Kimmeridgian, approximately 154 to 149 million years ago, meaning that they had evolved by the time the episode was set, but it's unknown if they occurred in North America. The ones in this episode are live acted by the banded demoiselle Calopteryx splendens. There are no damselfly fossils known from the Morrison Formation. Dung beetles also appear in the episode. Dung beetles include various genera within the families Scarabaeidae and Geotripidae. Scarabaeidae, or scarab beetles, are known to date back to the late Jurassic, but it is unlikely that basal members of the family would have had dung-feeding behaviours. Members of Geotripidae only date back to the Cretaceous at the very earliest. Neurognathus was an neurognathid coelacanth, which was a clade containing pterodactyloids and their relatives, from the late Jurassic, approximately 150 to 148 million years ago, of Germany, meaning it lived around the right time but in the complete wrong continent to appear. A better candidate would be Mesodactylus, a potential neurognathid from around the right time in the Morrison Formation. The Neurognathus looks more like a retooled Dinosaurs than a neurognathid, which, as of newer discoveries, should look much more like a nightjar or a frogmouth, with almost no neck and a wider, shorter face and massive eyes. It should also fill a niche similar to that of nightjars, being a nocturnal insectivore rather than an oxpecker analogue. It should also have a very heavy covering of pycnofibers, and its wings should fold backwards rather than to the side, and its wingtips should be more rounded. Stegosaurus was a stegosaurid stegosaur from the late Jurassic, 155 to 145 million years ago, of the United States and Portugal, meaning it lived at the right place and right time to appear in the episode. Stegosaurus is depicted as having very long back legs. Although Stegosaurus's back legs were longer than its front legs, they were much closer in length. This has been revealed by the discovery of Sophie the Stegosaurus in 2003, after the episode released, so this representation was believed to be accurate at the time of production. Stegosaurus's plates would have been covered in a horny sheath rather than skin, meaning they could not have been flushed with blood to change colour, although it's possible that they were colourful all the time. It should have 5 rather than 4 toes on its front feet, and 2 claws rather than 3. Stegosaurus's plates were actually much smaller in reality than they are depicted as in the series. It would also have had a longer neck and tail, as well as flatter thangomizers running almost horizontally from the tail. It is possible that some ornithischians, including Stegosaurus, had cheek-like structures, and although these are predators of the Stegosaurus in the series, they're too large compared to modern restorations. The plate arrangement is correct, being alternating, not paired, and it also has an accurate number of plates, 17. We have a specimen of Allosaurus with damage that matches that of a Stegosaurus stegomizer, meaning they were likely used in self-defense and against Allosaurus as depicted in the series, and the Stegosaurus is correctly restored with throat armor. Brachiosaurus was a brachiosaurid titanosauriform from the late Jurassic, 154 to 150 million years ago, of North America, meaning it lived in the right time and place to appear in this episode. The Brachiosaurus design is based on the African Brachiosaurus bronchi, now giraffe type, not the only true Brachiosaurus species, the American Brachiosaurus orthothorax. and although they are closely related, they differ in several ways, including Brachiosaurus having a less pronounced crest on its head, Brachiosaurus being bulkier in the chest and its forelimbs being wider apart, and Brachiosaurus having a longer torso and tail. The Brachiosaurus in the show's head crest is shown as being a thin ridge, when it should be more of a dome-like structure, as well as quite likely covered in soft tissue. It is also given a weight estimate almost twice the highest modern estimates, 70 tons, compared to the modern 37 tons maximum. Brachiosaurus is stated to have been the largest land animal ever. That title in fact belongs to Argentinosaurus. Its legs should be thicker and longer, and it should have a wider chest and longer tail. The Brachiosaurus's neck should probably be slightly more vertical than it is detected. Allosaurus was an allosaurid allosaur from the late Jurassic, 155 to 145 million years ago, of the US and Portugal, meaning it lived in the right time and place to appear. The Allosaurus is shrink-wrapped in the episode. It is said to be the apex predator of the more recent formation, but in reality this was the larger but rarer megalosauroid Taurophosaurus. The Allosaurus's skull is completely wrong. Its crest should be in front of the eyes, not directly above them. It should have small ridges leading up to these crests, and its snout should be much more
Rectangular.
Allosaurus most likely had lips, which aren't shown in the episode, and it is incredibly unlikely that Allosaurus would have hunted in groups. At the end of the episode it is stated that life will never again be this large. However, this is incorrect. Several titanosaurs, including Argentinosaurus,
Patagotitan, and the nightmare of an enigma that is Brachiosaurus,
were larger than any Jurassic sauropod, as well as several modern cetaceans dwarfing even these. The credits narration states that rising sea level has caused a decline in sauropod populations, but in fact sauropod diversity was just as high, if not higher, in the Cretaceous, just not in North America. This episode is set 149 million years ago in Oxford, only 3 million years after the previous episode. It is based on the Oxford Clay Formation, a formation that is believed to have been laid down from 166 to 160 million years ago, meaning it was laid down at least 10 million years before the episode setting, but the environment is believed to have been accurate to this formation. A better alternative for the location would be the Kimmeridge clay, which was laid down from around 150 to about 140 million years ago. It featured similar creatures in a similar environment. The episode was filmed in New Caledonia for the forests and some of the beaches, and the Bahamas for the underwater segments and some of the islands. And the infamous opening scene is well known to have been based on orcas attacking seals. Eustreptospondylus was a Eustreptospondyline megalosaurid from the late Jurassic, 163 to 154 million years ago, of southern England, meaning it lived in the right place to appear, but went extinct about 5 million years before the episode setting. The Eustreptospondylus is slightly undersized, and its design is incredibly wrong, as despite it being a megalosaur, it uses a modified version of the Allosaurus model, so its snout should be longer, thinner, and much more rounded. It should also have lips. It is also shrink-wrapped and should not be able to pronate its arms. Its colour scheme is quite drab and brown, thematically showing that dinosaurs are less important within the narrative than the more interestingly patterned aquatic reptiles, similar to the Coelophysis in New Blood, with dinosaurs starting out being eaten and going on to become more prevalent and even eating one of the main creatures. An alternative to Eustreptospondylus that is known from the Kimmeridge clay could be the larger megalosaur, Torvosaurus, or interestingly, Duratyrant, an early tyrannosauroid. Cryptoclydus was a cryptoclydid cryptoclydian from the late Jurassic, 166 to 160 million years ago, of France, England, and Cuba, meaning it lived in the right place to appear, but went extinct about 11 million years before the episode's setting. It is incredibly unlikely that any plesiosaurs beyond the very most basal could go on land, and if they could, they would not have been able to move on land, as their flippers were not flexible enough to move them on land, and their pelvis and clavicle was also much weaker for land locomotion due to being adapted for swimming. This idea of them going on land was based on the proposition that the plastrons, or belly ribs, were able to maintain the structure of the internal organs from being crushed by the lack of pressure while on land. Cryptoclydus would also have had some form of tail fluke in reality. It is stated to have weighed 8 tons, but in reality it is believed to have weighed a maximum of 1 ton. The Cryptoclydus' head and neck are too wide, and the neck is slightly too short. The footage of the Cryptoclydus hunting Leptolepis uses edited stock footage of penguins and tuna hunting herring. There are 2 Cryptoclydids known from the Kimmeridge clay that could act as substitute, Columbosaurus and Chimerosaurus. Both are around the same size as the Working with Dinosaurs Cryptoclydus, but I personally would choose Columbosaurus, as Chimerosaurus already got its time in the sun in Planet Dinosaur. Plus we have more complete remains of Columbosaurus. Ammonites are featured in the episode, identified in external media as Parasphinctes, which is a parasphinctid ammonitian from the mid to late Jurassic, about 165 to about 145 million years ago, of Antarctica, Argentina, Chile, Cuba, Egypt, Ethiopia, France, Germany, Hungary, India, Iran, Italy, Japan, Madagascar, Poland, Portugal, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Spain, Switzerland, the UK, and Yemen, meaning it lived in the right place and time to appear. The Parasphinctes is oversized. In reality, it was very small, having a very maximum diameter of around 10 centimeters. Other than this, it is incredibly accurate. Jellyfish appear. There are no jellyfish known from either the Oxford clay or the Kimmeridge clay. In the relatively close Solnhofen formation, laid down from around 152 to 150 million years ago, of Germany, there is a fossil jellyfish, Rhizostomites lithographicus, meaning it lived at around the right time and quite close by. It appears to be live-acted by a moon jellyfish, and although they both belong to the same class, Cyphozoa, Rhizostomites is a very basal member of this class, whereas the moon jellyfish is quite derived. Fish appear in the episode, live-acted by herrings. It is externally confirmed that these are Leptolepis, which was a leptolepid stem teleost from the early to mid-Jurassic, approximately 190 to approximately 163 million years ago, from Germany, Luxembourg, France, England, Italy, Algeria, Tunisia, and Morocco, meaning it lived in the right place to appear, but went extinct approximately 10 to 15 million years before the episode's setting. There is an indeterminate leptolepid known from the Kimmeridge clay. Ophthalmosaurus was an ophthalmosaurine barochromian from the mid to late Jurassic, 165 to 157 million years ago of Europe and possibly North America, meaning it lived in the right place to appear. Although you would think it went extinct before the episode's setting, I've withheld some vital information. More recent discoveries have found that Ophthalmosaurus may have existed into the earliest Cretaceous, about 145 million years ago. If this is true, then it was around to bear in this episode. There is some fossil evidence that some ichthyosaurs were completely black, but this definitely didn't apply to all ichthyosaurs, and it is likely that some were countershaded, as depicted in this episode. It is stated that Ophthalmosaurus had toothless snouts, but both the practical and CGI models have tiny teeth, which are accurate to the real animal. We have fossils of ichthyosaurs giving live birth, so this is accurate, and there is evidence of ichthyosaurs congregating to give birth in shallower waters. Interestingly enough, the adult Ophthalmosaurus do not appear very often in the episode, with most scenes featuring their young. There are possible Ophthalmosaurus remains known from the Kimmeridge clay. If you don't believe that Ophthalmosaurus lasted later than is definitively known, an alternative that is conclusively known from the Kimmeridge clay are the Ophthalmosaurines Thalassodraco and Nanopterygius, but Nanopterygius is closer in size to Ophthalmosaurus, making it a better alternative. Hybodus appears. Hybodus was a hybodont Eustylachian from the early Jurassic of parts of Europe. Not much is known of Hybodus, as until recently it was a wastebasket taxon, containing almost 70 species over its lifetime as a taxon, and was thought to have lasted from the entire Mesozoic as well as through in the late Permian. As we cannot know which Hybodontiform appears in this series, it is very unlikely that it was Hybodus, which lived in the early, not the late Jurassic. It is referred to as a shark, but it is not, belonging to an order of more basal cartilaginous fish. There are two hybodonts known from the Kimmeridge clay, an indeterminate hybodont, formerly Hybodus itself, and Dernonovarioidus. Liopleurodon was a Thalassophonian pliosaurid from the mid to late Jurassic, 165 to 155 million years ago, of Europe, meaning it lived in the right place, went extinct approximately 6 million years before the episode setting. The Liopleurodon is massively oversized, being said to be 25 meters long, when its largest estimate in reality is 10 meters, but even this is a stretch, as most realistic estimates give a maximum of 7 meters long. This exaggerated size was used because of fragmentary remains then assigned to Liopleurodon that were estimated to have given it a length of approximately 20 meters, and this was increased by 5 meters. It was incredibly unlikely that these remains would have belonged to the largest individual of the genus. These remains have been reassigned as a indeterminate pliosaur now, which has been scaled down to approximately 15 meters length maximum. Plesiosaurs like Liopleurodon would have had tail flukes, but it is believed that these would have varied between different groups of plesiosaurs. The coloration of the Walker Dinosaurs Liopleurodon is incredibly iconic, and reused for many Liopleurodon designs, as well as just pliosaurs in general across pop culture. The Liopleurodon is slightly shrink-wrapped, and its teeth should not be tusk-like and protruding, rather sticking straight down. A substitute from the Kimmeridge clay for Liopleurodon would be Pliosaurus, which, although larger than Liopleurodon, only reached a maximum length of about 9 meters in the larger species, Pliosaurus funki, which isn't even known from the Kimmeridge clay. Rhamphorhynchus was a Rhamphorhynchine breviquartosian from the late Jurassic, 150 to 148 million years ago, of Germany, as well as possibly from Portugal, England, Tanzania and Spain, meaning it lived in the right time and most likely the right place to appear. It is shown skim feeding, something that it could never do in reality, as its snout anatomy was completely wrong for this, not having a longer bottom jaw or the powerful muscles needed to do this. In fact, it would have hunted by diving into the water to catch fish. The toothy projections on the end of its snout would have been covered by skin. More recent studies have found that Rhamphorhynchus was most likely nocturnal. Rhamphorhynchus would have had a thicker neck. Its wings should also fold backwards rather than to the sides, and its wingtips should likely be more rounded. It should also have pycno fibers, and its tail fin should be smaller on top and larger on the bottom, rather than completely equal sized on both. A sea turtle corpse appears. Although true sea turtles, Chelonoidea, did not evolve until the early Cretaceous, there were some unrelated oceanic turtles known from the Jurassic. There are 6 genera of Thalassocalidian sea turtles, known from the Kimmeridge clay, Craspidiocheles, Acolonia, Pelobatocheles, Plidiocheles, Thalassemes, and Tropidemes, and as we only see a corpse in limited detail, it cannot be determined as any one of these in particular. Bark beetles, or scolotines, appear. Scolotiny only dates back to the early Cretaceous, and as such would not have evolved at the time of this episode.
There are no beetles of any kind known from either of the Kimmeridge or Oxford clay. Some squids appear. They are identified externally as cylindroteuthis, a cylindrotoothed belemnite, which is a different group of cephalopods, and cylindroteuthis is known from the early Jurassic to early Cretaceous of Asia, Europe, North America, and New Zealand, meaning it lived in the right place and time to appear. Although cylindroteuthis is known from the right place and time, it is not known from either the Kimmeridge or Oxford clay, but a different belemnite, Belemniteuthis, is known from the Kimmeridge clay. Mesolemulus, identified simply as a horseshoe crab, appears. Mesolemulus was a lemurid, horseshoe crab, Xiphosuran, from the mid-Triassic to late Cretaceous of Germany, England, Spain, Siberia, and Morocco, meaning it lived in the right place and time to appear. It is live-acted by modern horseshoe crabs, which makes sense as Mesolemulus was originally named as an extinct species of the modern genus Lemulus. Their behaviour of laying eggs on the high tide is accurate to their modern relatives. There are no horseshoe crabs known from the Oxford or Kimmeridge clays. The Bahamian island, where the final scenes were filmed, was covered with incredibly venomous sea snakes. The episode is set 127 million years ago in the Hortervian, 22 million years after Cruci. It is set in the Romualdo Formation of Brazil, which was laid down in the Albian approximately 111 to 108 million years ago, the Lakota Formation of the USA, which was laid down in the Barasian to Barremian approximately 140s to 120s million years ago, the Wessex Formation of the Isle of Wight in England, also laid down in the Barasian to Barremian, and the La Honguera Formation of Spain, laid down in the Barremian approximately 125 million years ago. The Wessex Formation segment was filmed in Highland, Tasmania, while the rest was filmed in various locations around New Zealand. Although every episode features at least one pterosaur species, this is the only one to focus on one and to feature more than one species. Ornithochirus was an ornithokirene lanciodontian from the early Cretaceous, 105 to 100 million years ago, of the UK and Morocco, meaning it was known definitively from Britain and likely from Spain, as Spain was approximately halfway between Morocco and the UK even then, but it didn't evolve for approximately 20 million years after the episode's setting. At the time of creation, Ornithochirus was a wastebasket taxon, being known from around 150 to 94 million years ago of the US, South America, and mainland Europe, as well as the UK and Morocco. The fact that many Ornithochirus specimens were known from all around the world was thought to be evidence of its being migratory. These different specimens being assigned to the genus is likely the origin of the sexual dimorphism in the episode, but this was based on different species, not different sexes. The Brazilian species, Ornithochirus marizembrinus, is now Tropiognathus. Tropiognathus was a Tropiognathine anhanguerid from the early Cretaceous, 121 million years ago, of Brazil, meaning it lived in the right place to appear in the Brazil segment, but evolved approximately 15 million years after the episode's setting. The American species is most likely based on Ornithochirus cuvieri, now Simoliopterus. Simoliopterus was a Simoliopterid Targaryen draconian from the earliest late Cretaceous, approximately 100 to 94 million years ago, of Europe and the US, meaning it lived in the right place to appear in the US segment, but evolved more than 20 million years too late to appear. Its anatomy is mostly based on Tropiognathus in the series, as Ornithochirus is quite fragmentary. Tropiognathus had a wingspan of 9 meters, Ornithochirus simus, the only valid Ornithochirus species, had a wingspan of 5 meters, and Simoliopterus had a wingspan of 3.5 meters, so none of them had a wingspan near that of the 13 meters of the creature in the episode. When walking, the pterosaurs are cumbersome and ungainly. We know from footprints that they would have been more graceful and quick on their feet.
The wings of the Ornithocaris, as well as the Tapejara and the unidentified pterosaurs, should fold back rather than to the side. The Ornithocaris is shown skim feeding, and like the Rhamphorhynchus in the last episode, this is incredibly unlikely, and their snout morphology is completely wrong to do this. The episode states that pterosaurs could not fly in the rain, but we know this to be false, as several pterosaurs fed by diving into the water like gannets, which require them to get wet and still fly afterwards. The Ornithocaris CG model should have pycnofibers, but the puppet does have these. At one point, the Ornithocaris lands feet first, when it would have in reality landed hands first. The model is slightly shrink-wrapped, and it is rightly not anthropomorph, but is being depicted as attacking the smaller Corkycephalus in order to steal fish, and not being treated like an ethical character, rather just a realistic animal. The Tapejara species in the episode, Tapejara imperator, has now been placed within Tupandactylus. Tupandactylus lived in the early Cretaceous, 121 million years ago in Brazil, meaning it lived in approximately the right place, but did not evolve until approximately 15 million years after the episode setting. Tupandactylus did not live in the Romualdo Formation with Tropignathus, but rather the Cato Formation, although it is possible that there was some faunal crossover, as these grew around the same time in the same continent. This is because Tupandactylus was in reality a frugivore, therefore living in the inland wetlands of the Cato Formation rather than the coastal Romualdo Formation. It should have longer legs and slightly smaller wings than is shown on the animal in the series. Tupandactylus is given ridges on its crest, but in reality its crest was a thin sheet of soft tissue. It is unlikely that Tupandactylus was sexually dimorphic, and like with Ornithocaris, this is potentially based on multiple species being assigned to Tapejara at the time, with the females being based on Tapejara wellenhofteri, the only true Tapejara species. The crest of Tupandactylus imperator was much larger and rounder. It too should have pycnofibers, which were not present on either the CGI or physical models. When the episode was written, Iguanodon was a wastebasket taxon, with a total of 24 species over its existence as a taxon being assigned to it. The episode features two species of Iguanodon on separate continents. The North American Iguanodon is based on Iguanodon lakotaensis, now Dakotodon. Dakotodon was a Styracostonan iguanodont from the early Cretaceous, approximately 130 million years ago, of South Dakota, meaning it lived in the right place to appear and at around the right time. It should be more heavily built and have longer, heftier forelimbs and lower hips with shorter back legs. Iguanodon's back should be flatter and less sloped due to this. The iguanodonts are stated as the first dinosaurs able to chew, but this is incorrect. Heterodontosaurs, which evolved more than 70 million years before the episode's setting, were in reality the first dinosaurs able to chew. The scene of the Dakotodon on the beach is based on the Dinosaur Ridge site in Dakota, where a massive trackway of iguanodont footprints were found, often thought to have been created by Eolambia. The Dakotodon's palms should face inward when walking quadrupedally. Due to another wastebasket taxon situation, at the time of the episode's creation, the American Hoplitosaurus marshii was lumped into the genus Polacanthus. Hoplitosaurus was a Polacanthosaurean nodosaurid, or possibly a Polacanthid ankylosaurian. Nodosaur taxonomy is currently in flux, from the early Cretaceous, approximately 130 million years ago, of South Dakota, meaning it lived in the right place to appear and around the right time to appear in the USA segment. It is unclear if there is a difference in design between the different continental variants, as they are very similar, but may have slightly different coloration. The not being able to tell is extenuated by the fact that we don't see the North American one in any clarity, but it is most likely just due to lighting differences. The Hoplitosaurus' snout should be shorter and rounder. Its legs should also be shorter, so its back should be flatter. Hoplitosaurus would have had a beak and a stiff tail, and the edges of its pelvic shield would most likely have been covered by its skin, and the numbers of digits and claws appears to be correct.
Podocarps appear. Podocarps are any member of Podocarpaceae, a family of Araucarial cupressids, which date back to the Jurassic, and were found throughout much of the world, meaning they would have existed at the right time and likely the right place to appear.
An early flowering plant appears. Flowering plants, or angiosperms, evolved in the early Cretaceous 130 million years ago, so they would have been around at the time. There are no plant fossils known definitively from the Lakota Formation. The flowering plant is supposedly Protoanthus, a fictional genus created for the series. They appear to be represented by Drimys winteri, belonging to Winteraceae, a family of magnoliids, which does indeed date back to the Cretaceous, although to the Aptian, which began approximately 14 million years after the episode's setting. Winteraces are also only known from the southern hemisphere. A wasp appears. Wasps, or Apocreta, evolved in the Jurassic, meaning that they would be able to appear in the episode. There are no wasp fossils known from the Lakota Formation. A parasite appears. This is Sauropterus, a sauropterid flea from the early Cretaceous, 120 million years ago, of Asia, meaning it lived in the right time. Although it is exclusively known from Asia, it parasitizes on Ornithocaris in the series, which is shown as migratory, so it is possible the old male picked it up while visiting Asia. Unidentified pterosaurs appear. They use the Corkycephalus model. There are no pterosaurs known from the Lakota Formation. There is only one ornithokyromorphan pterosaur from the early Cretaceous of the United States, Euctenodactylus, a coloborhynchine anhanguerid from approximately 125 to 100 million years ago in Texas, meaning it lived in about the right time to appear, and possibly could have lived in what is Dakota. The pterosaur is not particularly accurate to Euctenodactylus, having a longer snout with small crests on the ends, and no head crest, as well as the usual pterosaur inaccuracy of having two triangular wingtips. It is not identified in the episode, but it is a creature that reuses a detextured Liopleurodon model, and was identified in external media as Plesiopleurodon. Plesiopleurodon was a polycotyledonid leptocleidian from the late Cretaceous, 98 million years ago, of North America, meaning it lived around the right place to appear, but evolved about 30 million years after the episode's setting. For some reason it is called Liopleurodon in the American version, which went extinct almost 30 million years before the episode setting, and lived in Europe rather than North America. The Plesiopleurodon is, like the Liopleurodon whose model it uses, oversized, being 25 meters long, not a realistic 2 to 3 meters. It should be much less robust, and though it had a large head for a plesiosaur, its head was nowhere near as big as that of a pliosaur like Liopleurodon. There are actually 3 genera of iguanodonts from the Wessex Formation: Comptonatus, Mantellosaurus, and Iguanodon. For simplicity's sake, we will assume that this is Iguanodon. Iguanodon was an iguanodontid hadrosauriform from the early Cretaceous, 126 to 122 million years ago, of Belgium, Germany, Spain, and Britain, meaning it lived in the right place and around the right time to appear. Their palms should face inward when walking quadrupedally. Iguanodon should also be more heavily built and have longer, heftier forelimbs, and should have a flatter, less lobed back. It should also have lower hips on its body and shorter back legs.
It is accurately stated to be larger than the North American iguanodon, with Iguanodon growing to a maximum of 11 meters compared to Cotodon's maximum of 6 meters long. Its weight is also underestimated, growing to 4.5 rather than the stated 3 tons.
This one is based on the one true Polacanthus species, Polacanthus foxii. Polacanthus was a polycanthine nodosaur, or possibly a polycanthid ankylosaurian, from the early Cretaceous, 130 to 125 million years ago, of England, meaning it lived in the right place and time to appear. Its snout should be shorter, and its head less square and more triangular. The Polacanthus's legs should also be shorter, so its back should be flatter. It should have a beak and a stiff tail, and the edges of its pelvic shield should most likely be embedded within the skin. It appears that the arrangement and number of digits and claws are correct to what is known of the genus. Utahraptor was a Dromaeosaurine Dromaeosaur from the early Cretaceous, 139 to 134 million years ago, of Utah, meaning it lived on the wrong continent and went extinct approximately 7 years before the episode setting. The reason why the American Utahraptor appears in the UK is because due to Polychaetus and Iguanodon being believed to have occurred in both North America and Europe, it was supposed that Utahraptor could occur on both continents too. At the time of production, there were no known dromaeosaurs from Europe, but there were several large indeterminate raptors from mainland Europe. There is now a Eudromaeosaur known from the Isle of Wight from at around 125 million years ago, Vectiraptor, which meant it would be around the right place and around the right time to appear, but it would not have been big enough to fill Utahraptor's role. Utahraptor is now known to have been much bulkier and would have had feathers. It also should not be able to pronate its rest. It is depicted as a pack hunter, a common trope in paleomedia, but there is no evidence for this. In fact, there is evidence against it, as there are fossils showing that young Deinonychus had differently adapted teeth, meaning that it had a different diet to the adults, something that they would have to do if they had a complex social structure like this. It is much more likely that dromaeosaurs would have hunted in disorganized gangs, forming temporarily to hunt. It is accurately portrayed as not being a pursuit predator, but being better at ambush hunting and running in short bursts. Utahraptor is portrayed as using its single claws as a slashing weapon, but they were not designed to take the forces that would occur due to this, and it was much more likely that it and other dromaeosaurs would have used them for raptor-prey restraint, pinning down smaller prey, although a large bulky predator like Utahraptor could likely have hunted larger prey than itself with its powerful hand claws and large head. The Utahraptor is accurately given lips, as unlike other theropods, dromaeosaurs have almost always given lips in their depictions.
It should have a shorter, thicker snout with a slightly downturned lower jaw, and Utahraptor also had smaller arms than any other dromaeosaur in proportion to its body.
An unidentified British pterosaur appears. It is often identified by fans as Corkycephalus. Corkycephalus was an Anhanguerine ornithochiron from the early Cretaceous, 130 million years ago, of the Isle of Wight, meaning it lived in the right place and at around the right time. It uses a modified version of the Ornithochirus model with the snout crest removed, and has a shorter snout and a small crest on the back of its head, which is mostly accurate to the real creature, but it would have still had small snout ridges.
Pencil pines are stated to appear in the Wessex Formation. Although pencil pines and their relatives, Cupressaceae, date back to the Triassic, and as such were around at the time, the pencil pine, or Athrotaxus cupressoides, is only known from Tasmania.
Iberomezornis was an Iberomezornithid enantiornithine from the early Cretaceous, 125 million years ago, of Spain, meaning it lived in the right time and around the right place to appear. It is depicted with scaly legs, when its legs should have been covered with feathers down to just above the top of the feet. Iberomezornis might not have had a tail fan. Instead, it may have been more likely to have longer, more spread feathers, but this detail is not known specifically in terms of Iberomezornis, and this is very variable between different enantiornithines. The outdated hypothesis that birds outcompete pterosaurs is being shown in microcosm through the Iberomezornis chasing the protagonist Ornithochirus away. This episode starts the trend of the 4th episodes of Impossible Pictures Productions having the saddest endings, which is followed in Prehistoric Park and Primeval Series 1. The episode is set 106 million years ago in Antarctica, 21 million years after the previous episode. Despite being supposedly set in Antarctica, all creatures that appeared are known only from Australia, but the two continents were linked at the time, and it is stated to have been set later on in a rift valley between the two. The episode appears to be set in the Umarella Formation, specifically Dinosaur Cove, in far south Victoria, which was laid down in the Aptian to Albion 120 or 100 million years ago encompassing the temporal setting of the episode. It was filmed in the forests of New Zealand. Leelinosaura was an elasmarian from the early Cretaceous, 118 to 110 million years ago, of Dinosaur Cove, meaning it lived in around the right place to appear but went extinct approximately 4 million years before the episode's setting. Leelinosaura is shown hibernating, but more recent studies have found that this is unlikely. It probably had a thick coat of feathers, given that it lived within the Antarctic Circle, and it would help keeping it warm.
The chicks are accurately given some feathering, but it is small stringy feathers, rather than a full downy coat that they should have.
Some specimens tentatively assigned to Leelinosaura are known to have had a really long tail. It is unlikely that Leelinosaura's eyes were as large as are commonly depicted, as the specimen showing these large eyes is now believed to have come from a juvenile. The snout should probably be slightly longer, and its nesting strategy is based on that of megapodes, warming its eggs by burying them in piles of rotting plant matter. The Leelinosaura is depicted as huddling together for warmth in the winter, something they are believed to have done. Coolosuchus was a Chugootysaurid brachiopoid from the early Cretaceous, 125 to 120 million years ago of Victoria, meaning it lived in the right place to appear, but went extinct approximately 14 million years before the episode's setting. Coolosuchus would not have attacked by lunging out of the water like a crocodile, but rather by sucking in aquatic prey, similar to other amphibians. It is stated to have hibernated in winter, when it would rather go into a torpor state called brumation, but there is evidence of temnospondyls, which is the group that Coolosuchus belongs to, doing this. This creature is not named in the episode, as the specimen was not named at the time of production, but it was based on an ankle bone from northern New South Wales, which was originally thought to belong to an allosaur. That specimen has since been named as Australovenator, a megaraptorid tyrannosauroid from the late Cretaceous, 94 million years ago, but possibly dating back as early as 110 million years ago, of northern New South Wales, and possibly the Umarella Formation, meaning it may have lived in the right place in the right time. As mentioned, there is a megaraptoran fossil known from the Umarella Formation, tentatively assigned to Australovenator. The Australovenator should be more lightly built, and should have feathers and a longer, thinner snout. Australovenator would have also had much bigger arms, and would have primarily used these to hunt rather than its head. It is also shrink-wrapped. Pterosaurs appear. There were no named pterosaurs from Australia at the time of production. They reused the Corkycephalus model, so most likely are some form of ornithocaran. There are 5 genera of ornithocarans known from Australia in the mid-Cretaceous. Aussie Draco, which lived 109 to 103 million years ago. Ferrodraco, which lived 96 to 90 million years ago. Halischia, which lived approximately 105 to approximately 100 million years ago. Mythunga, which lived approximately 110 to 100 million years ago. And Thapungaka, which lived 104 to 100 million years ago, all being found in Queensland's Toolabuck Formation, except Ferrodraco. It is therefore most likely either Aussie Draco or Mythunga, and is often identified by fans as Mythunga. Mythunga is only known from Queensland, but it is stated to have migrated south. This connects with the Ornithocaris migration narrative from the previous episode. Martabarosaurus was an iguanodont, either a rhabdodontomorph or an elasmarian, from the early Cretaceous, 112 to 103 million years ago, of Queensland, meaning it lived in the right time to appear. It is depicted as being migratory, hence it not being in its native Queensland and northern New South Wales. There is no evidence of this, but migration is believed to have been most likely, out of all non-avian dinosaurs, in iguanodonts. If it wasn't an elasmarian, then it would most likely have had feathers and been more slender than was depicted in the series. It was definitely an obligate biped, not being able to get down onto 4 legs, although many fossil displays still depict it as quadrupedal. Martabarosaurus did not have thumb claws and would not have been able to pronate its wrists. there is no evidence of Motobarosaurus having an inflatable nose chamber. Rather, it had a large crest that was part of the skull. Podocarps appear. Podocarps are any member of Podocarpaceae, a family of araucarial cressids which date back to the Jurassic and were found throughout much of the world, especially the Australia, Antarctica and New Zealand regions, meaning that they would have existed at the time and most likely in the right place. A mammal, live-acted by a coati, appears. This is meant to be Steropodon, a steropodontid monotreme from the late Cretaceous, 100 to 96 million years ago, of northern New South Wales, meaning it lived close-ish, but didn't evolve for approximately 6 million years after the episode's setting. It also looks nothing like a steropodon, which in reality resembled a platypus rather than a coati. An alternative to steropodon known from the Victoria was Cryorictes, a cholicodontid, another family of basal platypus-like monotremes, that lived around 106 million years ago, meaning it lived at the right place and time.
Biting insects appear. They are live-acted by mosquitoes. Mosquitoes, Culicidae, date back to the Cretaceous, but did not evolve until approximately 7 million years after the episode's setting.
A giant weta appears. Giant weta are any member of the genus Dinacrida, the ancestors of Anostomatidae, the family containing most weta, evolved at least 80 million years ago. They are known only from New Zealand today, but their ancestors are thought to have been present throughout much of Gondwana, so it is possible for a weta or weta-like creature to have been present in the time and place of the episode's setting. Some species of modern weta are able to survive being frozen over winter, like is depicted in the series. In the scene where it gets eaten, the weta appears to be live-acted by a tree weta, which are members of the genus Hemidyna. Although they do belong to the same subfamily, Dinacrididae, they are different genera. You can tell them apart by the redder coloration and longer head on the tree weta. A tuatara appears. The tuatara, or Sphenodon punctatus, is a sphenodontid rhynchocephalian that evolved in the early Miocene, about 19 million years ago, in New Zealand, meaning it lived in the wrong country and evolved nearly 90 million years after the episode's setting. It is likely that the rhynchocephalians in general were conflated with specifically the tuatara, as it is referred to as having evolved in the Triassic, something true of the order Rhynchocephalia, but not the species Sphenodon punctatus. Although no rhynchocephalians are known from the area where the episode is set at the time of the episode's setting, it is not unlikely that there would have been one from there. It is stated at the end of the episode that the polar dinosaurs went extinct because of the South Pole freezing, but as the late Cretaceous went on, the temperature of the South Pole stayed mostly consistent and actually warmed over time, up until the freezing of Antarctica in the Eocene.
The episode is set 65 million years ago in Montana, 41 million years after the previous episode. It is set within the Hell Creek Formation from the latest Cretaceous of Montana, the Dakotas and Wyoming, but the environment is not accurate to Hell Creek, which was a swampy environment rather than a volcanic ash field. It was filmed in Chile, except for the scenes at the bottom of the volcano, which were filmed in New Zealand. There is a slight problem with the dating, as more recent studies have found that the KPG extinction occurred 66 million years ago, not 65 as previously thought. The idea that Earth was dying by the time of the KPG extinction is now thought to be outdated. Didelphodon was a stagiodontid archimetatherian, which was an extinct clade of marsupial relatives from the latest Cretaceous, 73 to 66 million years ago, of North America, meaning it lived in the right place and time to appear. In reality, it was more like an otter than a Tasmanian devil or badger as depicted in the series. Along with this, it would have likely been semi-aquatic and durophagous rather than a scavenger and nest raider. It is also given a weight estimate of 10 kilograms in the episode, nearly twice that of its realistic 5.2 kilograms. Tyrannosaurus rex was a tyrannosaurian tyrannosaur from the late Cretaceous, approximately 70 to 66 million years ago, of most of western North America. The T-Rex's head should be longer, less boxy, and more rounded and slightly smaller in proportion to the body. Its wrists should not pronate. It should have a longer, thicker tail and a larger, deeper chest. It is possible that Tyrannosaurus had feathers, and it almost definitely had them as juveniles. Tyrannosaurus almost definitely couldn't roar. It lacked the right vocal apparatus, and they probably would have made snarling and hissing sounds, similar to ratites and crocodilians. It is undersized at 5 rather than 8 tons, and the growth rate of it was quite slow in reality, meaning they would not have reached a length of 1 meter long by 1 month old. It is stated that female Tyrannosaurus were larger than males. This was based on an outdated hypothesis that females needed to be larger to provide more space to store eggs. In fact, there is no evidence of sexual dimorphism in Tyrannosaurus at all. The heads of the baby T-Rex should be thinner and slightly longer. A theropod corpse appears. It is sometimes identified as Nanotyrannus by fans, but Nanotyrannus has been reclassified to almost definitely be a juvenile Tyrannosaurus, and it is definitely not this, as it does not look anything like either the baby or adult T-Rex. There are other theropods known from Hell Creek, but none of these fit the description of the creature in the episode. A mammal corpse appears. It has been confirmed as Purgatorius in external media. Purgatorius was a purgatorioid plesiadapiform from the earliest Paleocene, 66 to 63 million years ago, of the United States, meaning it lived in the right place at potentially the right time to appear. Monkey puzzle trees, or Araucaria araucana, appear. Monkey puzzles are an Araucariaceae cupressus that dates back to the early Cretaceous. It was found through much of the world, meaning it lived in the right place and time to appear. There are tree fossils known from Hell Creek that are tentatively assigned to monkey puzzle tree. A butterfly appears. True butterflies, Rhopalocera, date back to the mid-Cretaceous, approximately 101 million years ago, meaning they were around at the right time to appear. There are no butterfly fossils known from Hell Creek. It appears to be live-acted by a Great Mormon, or Papilio Memnon. Unidentified small ornithopods appear. These are often speculated to be Thescelosaurus. Thescelosaurus was a Thescelosaurian pyrodont from the late Cretaceous, 69 to 66 million years ago, of North America, meaning it lived in the right time and place to appear. The model is a recolored version of the Leolinosaurus model, and is reused for the Othnielia in Ballad of Big Al. The Thescelosaurus might have had feathers in real life. This dromaeosaur is not identified in the original UK version, but in the inferior US version it is identified as Dromaeosaurus, which did live in the late Cretaceous of North America, including Hell Creek, but went extinct approximately 3 million years before the episode's setting. There are 2 named dromaeosaurs from Hell Creek at the right time, Achiroraptor and Dakotaraptor, but neither were named at the time of production. Dakotaraptor is the right size to be the creature in the episode, but it is chimeric and dubious, with some of its holotype belonging to turtles, not a dromaeosaur. Therefore it must be a Achiroraptor, a dromaeosaur, possibly a Sauroornitholestine, from the late Cretaceous, 67 to 66 million years ago, of Montana, meaning it lived in the right place and time to appear. But it is too small to be the dromaeosaur in the episode, which reuses a recolored Utahraptor, which is presumably the same size as the Utahraptor in Giant of the Skies, which was stated to be 5 meters long, rather than the 3 meters long of Achiroraptor. It should have feathers and non-pronated wrists, and the snout is too short and boxy for Achiroraptor. It also would have been slightly more heavily built, and probably had slightly shorter legs. And it is shown pack hunting, something they would not have done in reality, forming something closer to loose gangs. Ankylosaurus was an ankylosaurian Europodon from the late Cretaceous, 68 to 66 million years ago, of North America, meaning it lived in the right place and time to appear. It is unlikely that Ankylosaurus could kill a T-Rex with a single strike of its tail club. Its back should be flatter, and its back being so round leads to it being too tall at 2.5 to 3 meters in the episode, rather than the realistic 2 meters tall. It should have rounder, flatter osteoderms and less osteoderms, and it should have a flatter, less boxy skull. The tail club is also slightly too spherical, and the horns on its head should be larger and more pyramid-like, rather than just being horn-like. Torosaurus was a triceratopsian chasmosaurian from the late Cretaceous, 68 to 66 million years ago, of basically all of western North America, meaning it lived at the right time and place to appear. Its brow horns are placed too high up on the head, they should be right above the eyes. The baby Torosaurus' skull is probably too long, and the frill should also probably curve backwards and be shorter. We have evidence of chasmosaurians fighting in the way it is depicted of Torosaurus in the episode. A Triceratops corpse appears. It too was a Triceratopsian that also lived in the late Cretaceous, 68 to 66 million years ago, of western North America, meaning it lived, or rather died, at the right place and time to appear. Its brow horns are also in the wrong place. As of 2011, Anatotitan is a synonym of Edmontosaurus annectens. Edmontosaurus annectens was an Edmontosaurian sauropophine from the late Cretaceous, 68 to 66 million years ago, of western North America, meaning it lived in the right place and time to appear. Edmontosaurus and other hadrosaurs did not have thumb spikes, had a hoof-like sheaths on their hands, and had a horny beak rather than a duck-like bill. It should also have a flatter back. Edmontosaurus would have been as big as, if not bigger than, T-Rex. Its skull should be longer and less flat. The Edmontosaurus should have a thicker, more triangular neck, and it should have small spikes or lumps on its back. Quetzalcoatlus was a Quetzalcoatlian azhdarchid from the late Cretaceous, 68 to 66 million years ago, of North America, meaning it lived in the right time and around the right place to appear. Although Quetzalcoatlus itself is not known from Hell Creek, there is an indeterminate Quetzalcoatlian known from the formation. It reuses a modified Ornithocheirus model, but this is completely wrong from Quetzalcoatlus. It should have a longer and more robust neck, head and beak. It should also walk more upright with much longer back legs, meaning it should be less hunched over. It should have a larger, rounder crest, and it has the same recurring pterosaur inaccuracies with the wing folding. It is once again stated that pterosaurs were almost extinct by the end of the Maastrichtian, something that is now known to be outdated. The model appears to be undersized compared to its surroundings, but the narration states that it was oversized, stating a wingspan of 13 meters rather than a realistic 10 meters, and it is shown dip feeding and eating fish when it would have hunted by chasing down small land animals. A crocodile appears. It is confirmed externally to be Deinosuchus. Deinosuchus was an alligatoroid crocodilian from the late Cretaceous, 82 to 73 million years ago, of the eastern United States, meaning it lived in the wrong part of the continent to appear, and went extinct approximately 7 million years before the episode's setting. A better alternative is Thyracosaurus, which not only lived in Hell Creek at the right time, but also looks more like the creature in the episode than Deinosuchus does, having a longer snout with a bulbous mass at the end, while Deinosuchus simply resembled a large alligator. It is stated to be 1 ton in weight. This is too small for the 2 to 5 ton Deinosuchus, but appears to be accurate to the weight of Thyracosaurus. A snake appears. It is externally identified as Deinonychia. Deinonychia was a deinonychiid ophidian, meaning it was not actually a snake, but rather a very close relative, from the late Cretaceous, 85 million years ago, of South America, meaning it lived in the wrong continent to appear and went extinct approximately 20 million years before the episode's setting. An alternative to appear would be Cerberophus, an alethinophidian, or advanced snake, from the late Cretaceous, approximately 76 to 66 million years ago, of Montana, meaning it lived in the right time and place to appear. It's live-acted by a red-tailed boa. Given this, an even more fitting alternative is an indeterminate board known from Hell Creek. During the credits we see various modern mammals and birds, with these being African elephants, Loxodonta, lions, Panthera leo, Cape buffalo, Cincerus caffa, oxpeckers, Buphagus africanus, cattle egrets, Ardea coromanda, geese, Ansa cerulescens. Birds are once again accurately stated as being dinosaurs. And that was Walking with Dinosaurs. Thank you for watching this video and all of these videos over the last few weeks. I didn't include the Big Al breakdown because that will be coming out on the 25th anniversary, which is Christmas next year, so it wouldn't be out in time obviously for this video, but I might include that as part of my Walking with Beasts 25th anniversary. Thank you to Palaeo and Stu Bonk for helping with some of the research for the added bits of this video, and hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.